Well, I'm excited. Here we go.
Perfect.
Hey. Hello and welcome to Professional Envelopment. My name is Jayr Midas, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance to chatting with Sean Flanagan today. We're going to get a chance to really get into a bunch of topics, and really the first initial question that I ask anybody on this show is, yeah, man, how do you keep your sanity in industries that eat away at us slowly?
That's a good question. I guess through comedy. Comedy is the best thing in the world.
Nah, I agree with that. Having some laughs along the way definitely help to add to keep things at least lighthearted as best as you can, especially as you get through the hard days and probably periods of our lives, right?
Mhm.
So let me ask you. So at this moment, please like talk a little bit about what you do, a little bit of your day job work, a little bit about everything you do. As soon as the day ends, and then kind of, yeah, man, just like a little bit of projects that you're working on. Get a chance to share a little bit about yourself. If you want to plug anything, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. I'm a technology teacher for elementary level, like kindergarten through fifth grade, and teach, here in downtown Manhattan. And I also do stand up comedy on the side. I host a night on Saturday nights on Bleecker Street at the comedy shop. And so they're able to work together just because school teachers, we get out at 3 or 4, and then I got some hours to play around with in the evening and weekends. So that's my two part career, and I enjoy both of them. They're very, very different, but they're both pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, I got a chance, a little bit of background. I got a chance to work with you side by side for a while, and it was, of course, an absolute pleasure. And I think you bring a certain light and levity to the job market that is much needed and refreshing, especially in our society. So, yeah, man, as I said, like you just bring a positive attitude, and you're an ambitious go getter who's willing to help out, like at any turn change. Yeah, you display a lot of flexibility, and as I said, you put yourself in there without any question or hesitation. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure if I'm necessarily speaking on behalf of the workforce itself, very very thankful to have you around. I think you're a real great culture fit for any place you decide that you would like to be in.
Appreciate that. I mean, it's definitely what it's all about. Like, if you're working in a school, is being a people person, and getting along with other faculty and parents, and of course kids. So it's like, it's a good thing. I think school's great. You meet a lot of characters. You meet a lot of really nice, bright kids who want to be there, who enjoy the spot. And if I can make it any better, or more interesting, or of course more educational, and just bring them something new as often as I can, then it's a gift. Unfortunately, teaching technology is like, there's always something new, and there's always something pretty exciting for me. I enjoy technology, so.
That's awesome. All right, so I think let me ask you how when you get into like technology education. I mean, one is probably one of the more fun subjects for kids. Like they look forward to it. You probably get a chance to teach them something new about the things that they're touching that they didn't even know prior. Like you add some extra context and information for them. You help probably certain people to explore their passions within this realm. And yeah, in an ever evolving field, there's also something new that you as an educator are always learning. Do you feel like there are any challenges in this type of work that you do?
Yeah, and forgive the background noise. I live in Midtown Manhattan, so it's always crazy out
Living the
here.
dream. Woo. Living the dream.
Gotham City over here. So,
That's right.
yeah, I think the kids are always kind of moving. maybe a couple steps ahead of us as technologists, just the same way when we were kids, kind of millennials on online and discovering so many new tools and platforms. And so I just have to try and stay two steps ahead of them, and it's not always easy. And we don't want to just like block the internet, for instance, but we want to make it like a safe, closed garden experience that the child is actually learning, even if they're having fun. Two things can happen there, but it just feels like sometimes the internet's moving too quick. It's hard to kind of keep track of what's what. So that is definitely probably the biggest challenge.
Hmm. Yeah, I see that. I could, you know, as you said, I think it's not always the biggest. It's not always the easiest thing to do, especially when it comes to the rate in which technology is constantly advancing, right? So it's like you're kind of have to kind of keep your ear to the pulse of what's like going on in terms of the overall field itself, like knowing how it's going to go, and then being able to articulate that to a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old who probably is like, most are for it, but some of them like you're probably like breaking their minds probably like with some of the stuff. Or you know what? They'll probably have you ever like gotten to experience where like kids like taught you something new about technology or the field itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a few kind of educational games nowadays that are actually like more educational than just games. So it's kind of different than when I was a kid, and I feel the kids always know where to go. Like there's one called Prodigy, there's one called Gimkit, and basically, they're gamified learning experiences and flashy colors and kind of Pokemon type look to some of them, and so of course the kid's gonna love it. But the fact that it does actually seem school appropriate to me, I don't know if I'm always the buck always stops with me, but I'm impressed that the kids have like these kind of tools that do seem like some learning is happening in there. It's kind of nice to see. Yeah.
So if you had to compare your time as a student, and now being a student in this modern era, do you see the stark changes, or is there? Do you feel like one is, usually they'll say back in my day, education was like this. Then they kind of speak about it with a little bit of pride. Do you kind of have that same ideology? Do you think that education or the education that we're giving right now kids is headed in the correct direction? Do you appreciate what's going on? Is there anything from your past that you wish you would have had, now that they have?
Yeah, I guess, it's becoming more and more tech as we go forward. At the child will have a computer in almost every subject, except of course any physical education or anything like that. But um, when we were kids, the computer was really just limited to one subject, and that was learning how to use a computer, or type, or maybe coding if your school was ahead of the curve. But yeah, I think the kids are lucky that they have this new way of learning, that everything is contained in one device. For me, my organization was always all over the place as a kid and a teenager in high school. So if I had had a Mac, let alone with some type of AI or chatbot that like kept certain information for me and kept dates and deadlines and due dates, um, it would have helped me a lot
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I got to say, I think the way that we this is my personal like opinion. I think the way that we tackle education, or the way that like the classroom operates now, is in a optimistic sense. You see it where it's definitely more student centered, right? guided by the interests of the kids or where things are currently going and trending. Um, before there was, of course, there was some things that we have had that have become lost over time. I was having a conversation with somebody saying that, nobody knows how to write in cursive anymore. That, which I don't know if that's necessarily a necessary skill in this modern society. What do you think about cursive and it being omitted from school, quote unquote?
uh, I guess it's okay. I don't know. I still use it. I write my notes on my pad here in cursive, but it's a good question. I guess I guess they probably should keep it, but that is
Yeah, I
not
think
what.
so.
Yeah, yeah,
I think so. I mean, I guess I understand why there's less of a focus on it, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I think that I don't know. Cursive now has become more of an artistic artistic writing style rather than I don't know how just an alternative way to one sign your name. I know that that's we're also getting away from that and technologically, right? When we pay, now when we do Apple Pay or whatever, we don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to sign anymore. We just press a button and continue to go on and stuff like that, using our fingerprints, our faces, and stuff like that to identify ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's something that I'm kind of thinking about myself. Like, is it even? Are we getting to a point where it may be just a moot point to ask anybody to write a C with a extension on it? Like I think that, as I said, right now, I think it's very interesting that we're weighing in like on what's important for the future and or
Hmm.
what that next stage is. So like speaking with you and your vantage point, I'm like, hey, you definitely have a unique perspective, especially coming from the content in which you teach.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So we talked about offline, Bill Gates. We talked about what's next.
Hmm.
Um, so did you get a chance to see it all for yourself?
I've only watched half of the series. I think it's 6 episodes. Yeah.
6 episodes, and
Yeah.
from your experience, like what is it about? First, I think for anybody who hasn't seen it.
It's about like a week in the life of Bill Gates in 2024. And obviously, he's pretty, step back from Microsoft at this point and just has a few different areas he's working in. And AI is one of them, climate change is another, misinformation. And he's got all these experts, obviously, in each area. But he's just asking big questions and learning with the audience. Like you get to go into the room and discover everything with him. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, it is, and so I didn't get a chance to see the episodes themselves, but I
Yeah.
did get a chance to see the trailer and an
Mm,
interview that he did on the Today Show.
nice.
Yeah, which I thought was fascinating is the right word to use because you know when I think one of the highest societal technological minds of our time is what you were telling me as well, like is mind blown about what's going on next. That goes to show you how much we've advanced and how much we've leaped in technology and just its concept. Like
Hmm.
soon enough, we're gonna have things that are be automated that are gonna be running for us. That obviously we have to find a different way to bide our own time. Um, because I guess all of these X things will have been taken care of for us, which is a good thing I think in many aspects, as we can see that like once mind space is opened up for one thing, that allows humans to do something completely different or something more in areas that need attention. Um, you and this is just speculative. We're saying this anecdotally. Do you think that just anything that's going to need attention, that's with certain things that are going to be open, like our mind space being open up to things? I think right now, like what do we start to think of next as a people, as a society?
I mean, the first episode is the most important to me. The AI episode where he goes to the OpenAI headquarters, and Bill Gates was in the room when ChatGPT was first released, almost 2.5 years ago now. So it feels like that's the most important thing for me in my eyes, is that this will either be able to kind of save us or destroy us in the subsequent areas that he explores, which are, like politics and climate change and all these other really big topic issues. But
Mhm.
machine learning and delegating a lot of work and information to computers is very big, and it's happening already, obviously, in our lifetime, and it feels like it could happen in a big way, within this century that we're in here now. So it feels like the most important part of that series is the AI episode. And so if anybody's listening, just watch the first one, and you learn um, kind of how soon all of this is coming about. What are the ramifications, and what are the upsides? Like it had definitely a positive view. Open AI is obviously AI forward, and talk about kind of just opening up a opportunity economy or even a leisure economy that eventually hard work will become a thing of a past, and that's kind of crazy to imagine. But if so many things are automated, perhaps we'll all be in the 1%. So that is, one of the promises of artificial intelligence, that somehow it could level the playing field for the entire human race. So
Mm. Well, I would hope for that. That sounds very optimistic. I know that at the same time, like when needs get fulfilled in one area, right, then we start to look in areas of lack in other facets of our lives. So
mhm.
um, it will then further our, I'm gonna use the word first world problems, quote unquote, right? It would then further that to the next stage, whatever that may be. But I think optimistically, I do like the sound of, there's going to be food on the table, a roof over our head, and just a way to live within comfortable means that
Mm,
we're able to not think of, oh, where am I going to get my next meal, or am I
mhm.
going to be able to, afford my living quarters. That to me sounds very lovely.
Definitely.
And then after that, everything else could be figured out, right? Then I think that would open the door theoretically for people to explore their passions a bit more, or
Mhm.
to lean into what their skills are and what they truly want to do with themselves. That's the hope here, right?
That's it. My dream job is to not have a job. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a that's a perfect quote for professional development. My dream job is not to have a job. You're absolutely right about that. Or at least not for it to feel that way. Correct.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of drudgery that we still do. Yeah, obviously we're past the industrial revolution, of course, but it's like there's still just a lot of slogging through, I don't know, just certain forms and HR trainings and admin and in spreadsheets and stuff that will 100% go by the wayside within the next decade or two. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what do you think about remote learning? Like,
Mm.
or not remote, not just remote learning, or remote work in general. I think um, I it seems that that's what more people have requested, right? In these days and times, what it seems
Mhm.
like. Um, I think that there probably will be less of a need for offices. Would that be a safe thing to say within the next like 10, 15?
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking at a bunch of offices here. I live in Midtown, and it feels like I don't know where everyone's at. It feels like it feels empty most of the time. Specifically in the Chrysler Building, right there, they
Mhm.
got into some whole turmoil in the last 5 or 10 years. That there's like that's only 30% occupancy out of the whole building, and so that's crazy. It just feels, yeah, that this is all going to change. Remote learning, I think there is a future there, and I think that homeschool and sort of pod based learning could be big again. It was big briefly during COVID and pandemic, that families would hire teachers remotely. And so I think that could be big again, if families wanted to travel, or we'll see what that looks like. But just right now, obviously, education model in America is kind of still broken. I feel like the public model is very imperfect and the private model is too expensive. So I think that in the future, there will be some intermediate between the two. That is some kind of homeschooling pod model with at least a couple human teachers via Zoom, augmented by artificial intelligence tutors that kind of meet with the kids. And so I think the future is, if a parent either just wants to save money or feels like, the home is good enough, that the child can be there and maybe the parents working from home, stuff like this. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for no, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. I'm going to shift gears slightly, and I'm going to talk a little bit about technology, Don. Right. Um, for one, let me thank you. It was what I'm referencing is a project that I was working on through a poetry adventure story called Jeremiah's Chapters. And then I featured you for chapter 305, chapter 3.5, episodes 3 through 5. And the cool part about getting a chance to interact with you, I just gave you a few prompts
Mhm.
and asked and I just asked you to answer a few questions, and then I turned that into an episode, and then it led to a scenario that we our characters met in 2088.
Mhm.
um and the technology Don was the living embodiment of AI.
Uh-huh.
But definitely, it was called a digital citizen because AI has now become a term that was passe or now derogatory toward sentient life. So
Uh-huh.
um, it so yeah, that's the overall concept of the episode. But that was one of the more fun episodes I did throughout my time.
Nice.
When you heard it back, what were your thoughts, if you had any?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely listened on Spotify, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I think I've only really heard one spoken word poetry album, and that is Gil Scott Heron and but the techno remix with Jamie XX. Do you know this album?
No.
Oh, it's from 2011. It's called "We're New Here," and the DJ took Gil Scott Heron and put it over electronic, and it was Gil Scott's last album before he died. So that's the only spoken word album I know. So 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 I hopefully we hit somewhere near that mark, but I don't know. Those are big shoes to fill, obviously.
Indeed.
But I appreciate the format, and I like the concept, and yeah, I'm down for any kind of creative stuff. I know we were talking about George Carlin the other day a little bit briefly, and I feel that I just heard one of his tracks for the first time on Spotify. It's called Modern Man. I don't know if you've ever heard it, and it's much more spoken word poetry than stand up, and he basically just goes on this. I can't see it, but it looks like he's reading off of like for 3 minutes. So I think the format is very cool and very powerful. So I was honored to be a part of it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, I have some homework to do after our conversation. There's a couple of things that I have to look up. But that sounds amazing. I mean, uh, a poetry album techno remix sounds absolutely fire. I was like, okay, we've now ventured into brand new
I'll
territory. I'm
send it in
super
the
excited.
chat. It's a pretty legendary album, and so yeah, that was his last album before he passed away. Pretty cool.
Yo, that's awesome. All right, I got you. So I'm gonna look up. Wow. Okay, we're new here. Jamie XX, George Carlin, Modern Man. Definitely gotta look those up. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Man, I want to shift over. Let's yes, as we now we're venturing into the creative space. I want to talk about you and your comedy, man. Like,
Mhm.
what got you into it? Like, when did you make the conscious decision that heck, I'm going to take the stage? That's a very brave choice to make,
Sure.
and yeah, just to step into it, do it, knowing I got a chance to know you as a comic. I got a chance to see you up on stage, so I know that you bring this energy of lightheartedness and funniness, like with this like relatability that you have on stage, this presence that you bring. And then yeah, man, I mean, you're able to do just quite a few things with it. So I'll let you. I'll relinquish the wheel, but I think that yeah, I mean, what got you into it in the first place?
I guess I loved it as a kid. I think I downloaded Chris Rock's special Bigger and Blacker off of LimeWire when I was 10 years old, and it changed my life. For real though, he was the man when I was 10 and
Yeah,
11, just that it was, kind of raunchy, and he had a few movies coming out around the time. I remember one movie called Head of State, where he was the first black president, and I just loved Chris Rock when I was a kid. But there were a few others. My father and even my grandfather were into like Johnny Carson and late night television, golden era of late night television. And so I got into some of that, and also Conan on late night, and was definitely interested in Saturday Night Live. Had some of those DVDs from classic Will Ferrell era kind of sketches, and so I think that I was blessed to grow up in kind of a golden age of comedy movies as well. That the Seth Rogen and Steve Carell movies started coming out in theaters, and so that influenced a lot of my thinking around it, and it's just been off to the races ever since. I think I've done comedy in different stages of my life. In grade school, I was in a couple of school plays. In college, I did my first few open mics, but then it wasn't until the past year or two, in my 30s, that I kind of decided to actually write down some material, look at what the craft of writing stand up comedy is, and then pull from all those sources of inspiration that I just told you about. So now it's definitely a lot different, than kind of just freestyling it and improvising with friends back in the day. But now it's kind of actually like a craft, and trying to learn more about it, and and perform it. Yeah,
hmm Yeah, so it's something that's like taking on a life of its own, and that's real. That's real cool, and I'm glad that you speak to something that is deeper. The experience happens before you even took the stage, or the
mm,
experience happened before you started to write down the material.
yeah,
Like you've been building for this for a long time, which is uh, great. I think having that choice to say that this is something I'm going to do regularly, like as I said, like you've and also evolved throughout time, right? I know what it's like to go around, right, to do different,
hmm
different performances, so to
mm,
speak. Um, and that in itself, doing it is a joy of yours to get up on stage, but it's also a grind. It's something that's also like not as easy as it sounds.
totally.
Um, so it definitely takes what they call a labor of love, right? To do something with this level of intention, and again, want something with this level of confidence as well, like that. It's definitely built over time. Do you feel that from your first performance ever to now that you built some level of confidence, or you built some stage presence over time?
Definitely, I think I remember my first open mic back in the game when I was 32 years ago. And I feel like that was, just very amateur. I didn't really know how to write the joke. Fortunately, I had like two childhood friends there. It was a small mic, so I could kind of just mess around and do whatever. I think I was doing impressions of, New York City pizza rat as if he was like an Italian mobster or something. And it was just like, I don't really have a joke here, but it was just fun, so it's all good. It's all good. Now now I try to do those same jokes and just write a few more punchlines, and not much has changed. But I
Yeah,
kind of just get the idea that it's like, oh, okay, I try to write a joke in there. It's all good. So it's definitely different 2 years later. And to your point about it being like a hustle or grind, it's true, but it's definitely the best one in my opinion. So I think I just have to be grateful when it's kind of like texts coming in or emails or making it to the mic or the show, and it's just like, okay, this is still pretty good work. And so yeah, I get to see the progression and change over 2 years. It's been good. Yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome. And then like, how's the vibe like when it comes to being around other comics or taking either words of wisdom or sharing ideas or sharing moments about the craft with the fellow like-minded individual?
There's a lot of great comics like that for talking about that stuff. I feel at first I thought it was like all competitive and kind of, just
Yeah,
boxed
dog eat
out.
dog, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Lone wolf sigma mentality or whatever. But there's actually a lot of nice, funny people who really don't mind sharing their secrets or whatever. And the secret is just like, we're here to entertain, and this is how you write a joke, and this is how you could hit that joke better. People give feedback on your open mic set, and it's really helpful. So I take a
Mm,
few classes with a few teachers. One guy's named William Keene, another girl's named Jana Bernard, and then I take a class at the Comedy Cellar with this veteran Rick Chrome, who's friends with Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle. And so if I kind of try to lean into these mentors and keep tabs with all of them. It's helpful for me and just makes it feel like there is some kind of education happening. So yeah.
that's awesome. Um, any word of advice for anybody who wants to get up on stage and has always been hesitant to?
Yeah, it's easier than you think. I think the key is just trying to write a joke for the first time. Take one sentence about your life, your place of residence, your friend group, whatever, and then write another sentence underneath that kind of subverts the first. So just change the direction, and that's the basic idea of a joke. Really, it's just like, what are we expecting you to say, and then say the opposite. So write 10 of those, and then get on stage and perform it, and that's your first open mic. So it's not as difficult as it looks to write it. It can be very difficult to do the whole package, to get up there and read it and try to have the confidence or whatever. But just Googling how to write a joke, writing 12 of them, and then going up on stage is, I think, something that everyone could and should do. It's fun, and it makes you think. It's like doing a crossword puzzle or something.
Mm, nice. Um, yeah, that's pretty great. And then I wanted to ask you about, you recently took a trip overseas. You performed out in the UK, and I can only imagine you absolutely slayed the crowd over there. So, yeah, man, what was it like? Was there any differences for you in terms of an American audience as opposed to a European one? Like, I want to know all the things.
Yeah, it's a really cool venue called the Comedy Store in London. And they do an open mic that's kind of funny. It's called like Gong Open Mic. They actually have a gong on stage, and if you're not funny, they'll slam the gong. So it's tough. And I only did a short set. I only had a couple jokes, so I didn't get gong, thank God. But I felt like I felt like it was a tougher crowd. They're either just like a little bit more, I don't know, intelligent than us Americans or whatever. Who knows what? Just slightly different. I didn't do the New York City pizza rat joke, obviously. I don't think that would have worked over there, but just tried some new stuff. And that's part of the craft as well, that everywhere you're going it's going to be site specific. That's the nature of it. And the crowd's going to be different. Know your audience. And so it was fun, but it was challenging. It was not easy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that, yeah, that sounds very interesting. I mean, not only Yeah, and I would imagine, right, that you go to different places, like you have to tweak your material a little bit to meet the crowd. So, nah, I mean, I'm glad that you took that opportunity to challenge yourself in that way. Did you come back? Did you come back feeling a little bit different, or feeling a little bit more like, um, feeling a little bit more like you were in the like the scene in New York City is the scene for you? Like, did you come back with the feeling like, oh, like like I got a chance to kind of like could get a grounding of who I am more as a comic, or so, some or something to that effect?
Yeah, I would definitely like to do more over there because it is so different. But New York is the scene for me for now. I think that over time, summers as a school teacher, I can spend more time in London and Europe and see what that's like. But it was a good one off for now. I think over time, I'll have to see how that translates. I see Americans go on Europe and UK comedy tours all the time, and I'm sure that they change their content a little bit. It's just,
Yeah,
the whole world is different. Yeah.
yeah, that's very true,
Yeah.
and that goes into the research aspect of things, right? Like that, you go, you see what's relevant, what's funny. As a matter of fact, I was actually in, like, in similar fashion, similar circumstances.
Mm.
I was talking with a fellow poet or songwriter, musician, and we were going back and forth, and we were like talking, like he was giving like a healthy critique of my
Mhm.
work,
Mm.
and he went. So I had read him something about the non-history of the U.S. in under 90 seconds. And he went back and he like interpreted it as at the end of it, he was like, oh, like he goes, your work, or how do I describe it? He goes, your work is the comedy scene in London would be like my work. He called it, described it as cheeky, where like it's like sarcastic, but it's also lighthearted in a way. So like there's like but like there's like a dry delivery to it,
Mm.
um, and there was some level of sassiness in the work itself,
Mhm.
which is funny because yes, I was kind of going for that, but like when he said that it was more like what my delivery was suited for, like he kind of gave me an idea of like, oh, this is